So good morning.
Good morning.
It's really, really cool to see, especially you here, and to whoever's watching. Good morning. So the theme is liberation and freedom, which seemed intuitively right for now. So maybe it's first just good to look at the difference between the two. What's liberation, shihor, and what's freedom, chofish. And then maybe even to contemplate what is liberated, that which can be liberated, what is caught and what is liberated. So in the world of form and people, the people that we are, in apparently separate forms, separate bodies for now, separate minds, separate thoughts, separate identities. It can seem that we lose our freedom, that we're not also free at the same time as being in a lifetime, inside a space, inside a particular job or a particular process or feeling or pattern of feelings. But this is not entirely true. The opposite of liberation, the opposite of being caught, of being imprisoned, is liberation, being set free. It's always a dance between the two. You see it when the children go to school now, that they are pushed into a form, and at 1 o'clock they're liberated. But the freedom was always there at the same time. Freedom has no opposite, which means that even when we're most caught and limited inside a particular position, we are absolutely at the same time totally free. So the first experience of liberation in a way is the experience of moving out of a form, moving out of a structure which doesn't define who we are. And in moving out, we kind of have an easier access to the freedom which was always there. But that's not entirely true. We also have a very easy access to the freedom when we're stuck inside, and perhaps even more, because we suffer, because there is a limitation. There are levels to liberation and freedom, because freedom in itself, because it's always there and has no opposite, includes the ability in the first place to move into any structure, the ability to be in a body completely, the ability to think, to really move with thought and with understanding, the ability to feel. All of this is a function of freedom. We have the freedom to do that. We have the freedom to be imprisoned. The freedom's always there. The more liberated we become, in the sense now we move from liberation to liberated, the more we have the fluidity to move into a position or a perspective or a job or an obligation or a process. Because the freedom isn't lost and we know that we can move out again, which means that the fear goes down. You can go to work as an enlightened Buddha to the stock exchange, do that job with all of its forms, and leave again without actually being losing contact with who you inherently are, without suffering. It's an incredibly important subject because we suffer so much more in our resistance to what is there anyway. Anyway, we're physically here in a body which will suffer, which grows old. Anyway, we're in a process together of interbeing, Even if we were never to be suffering or have anything terrible happen to us, we're affected by everybody around us, by the fear, by the anger, by the passion, by the love, by the instability. We're anyway affected. So the freedom to truly be here depends on this one critical factor, which is that there is no polarity between freedom and imprisonment and form. It's not there. The freedom is always there. You can suffer and be free. You can be imprisoned for life at the same time that you're free. The freedom can't be hurt. It can't be damaged. So what's this freedom? The question is, can we see it? Can we feel it? Can we experience it as something beyond cause and effect? I got out of prison, so now I'm free. So maybe we get a flash of the freedom which was always there. But can we experience the freedom which is anyway there? Can we experience it in every moment as part of who we are? So that's very close to awakening. This awakening on the level of consciousness from beyond the mind, from beyond form, because most form, even our ideas of how we're physically here, is created actually by the mind. We think ourselves. We think ourselves in a body. We don't really connect with being in a body. We have an idea of our space. It's an idea. So the liberation of thinking, in the sense of being able to move behind thought without in any way being in a struggle with thought, is very, very much connected with this window of freedom. It doesn't mean that we're free of all this human stuff, and we're free of a brain, and we're free of suffering, and we're free of physical life and being human. It means that the freedom is also there, which in itself redefines it. It makes it another universe. When we allow the freedom to be also there at the same time. So, on the level of consciousness, waking consciousness, which is mostly where we're enslaved, because when we're asleep we're free. On the level of consciousness, where we are identifying with forms, with our jobs, with our gender, with our life stories. These forms are pretty much encoded, encased with layers of fear. But the fear in itself, as an experience, when you really go into the energy of fear, is very close to bliss. And if you kind of almost scientifically check the first form, the physical body, the form that is most tangible, its boundaries, its surfaces are where bliss is generated. Before there's fear, there's bliss. When we really come into form, bliss comes forward, and there's a freedom in that. There's a really strong connection between freedom and bliss. When we experience our own inherent freedom, the real freedom, the freedom beyond form, form becomes incredibly blissful. It's in a way the nervous system, or the fear level of the nervous system, begins to respond as an after effect with bliss. It becomes blissful in a sense of, the word bliss is close to blessed, but I don't want to put too much religious hangers on it, but it becomes almost miraculous. Miraculous to have a physical form. Miraculous, or blessed, or blissful, even to be able to have one thought. or the freedom not to respond to the thought. The freedom, the subtle freedom of being able to have a thought and to have an attitude to the thought. There's a kind of miraculous opening made possible just by freedom. This is partly because freedom on this level is very much connected with consciousness, which in itself is pure. It's not caught in time and space. It gives form, in a way. It affirms form. Freedom itself isn't the result of anything that was, anything in memory, anything that's been done, anything that you've done. It's not even the result of anything you feel or the way we feel ourselves to be. It's not in any way endangered by anything that could be in the future, anything that we fear, that we imagine in the future, what could come, what will be. It's really existential. And when the existential freedom meets form, the pure effect is bliss. The beauty of this is that we can work with that, because there is suffering and there is pain and there is physical discomfort. But because the bliss is always a given result of freedom, we can circulate between our bliss and areas of suffering. And when we touch a place where we're really stuck in pain or in a particular mind frame or a particular attitude, with another space where we're blissful, even if it's just a blissful memory, the feeling of bliss, the sensation of bliss, and we totally surrender to the sensation of bliss and then move back to the form of pain or suffering, and then move back to the bliss and back to the suffering, then this vibration of bliss gives an invitation to the perimeters of the form of suffering. Something in the block or the place where we're hooked begins to remember its life. It comes to life again. Which often the suffering is counterintuitive. The last thing we want to do is bring suffering to life. But actually, when we give it life, we move to it with a perception of bliss. We bring the bliss energy. The membrane of the block or the suffering starts to vibrate at a higher frequency, and transformation begins. It begins to sing in a way. It begins to tell its story. And we're innately curious, and the story will lead to where this block came from. It will lead us on a process which will lead to understanding, which leads to freedom of mind, which leads to freedom of consciousness, more possibility to step out. So that's the kind of liberation process which is possible through allowing the freedom which is there when we're physically here, not as the opposite of, not as a place to get to later. I want to be free, always want to be free, later, later, later. It doesn't work like that. You're free now. You're totally free now in this. Whatever it is we're in, our freedom is there at the same time within it. Does that make any sense? Yeah. So there's three basic issues. The first is the opposite of imprisonment, or form, to say it more gently, is liberation. Freedom doesn't have an opposite. It's always here. We'll find it where it's there when we die, it's there when we live, it's there when we're in a body, it's there when we're not in a body, it's there when we're asleep, it's there when we're awake, it's there when we're totally bummed, it's there when we're not. We don't need to do anything to get it, except fall back. The second is that freedom is really existential, it's part of existence. At least as far as we can tell as humans, from human experience. Is there a space in the universe which isn't free? That isn't also free? And to think that there is any space in the universe which is not free we would have to think there was a contradiction between freedom and the laws of the universe, the laws of physics. But why should we think that? This is how we're programmed to think.
We've got freedom to think and to build things, and then we've got jail.
Exactly, and then we've got jail.
All day.
So within that freedom, we're studying something.
We're free to build ourselves and
Yeah.
to build something to protect
Yeah,
our freedom, our love, our
yeah,
what we think, and
yeah,
we forget the freedom.
yeah. Which is a totally free choice.
Yeah.
And within those jails, those restrictions of form, let's say we're free to create a life where we have no physical movement. We can't talk, we can't move, we're totally disabled. Can you imagine the service of perspective that life would give to be imprisoned like that?
Total freedom.
It brings a lot of freedom. No? Yes. Yeah. This is the kind of nature of it. Nelson Mandela, in prison, mastered freedom. He really mastered freedom to the core. And he came out and he changed a nation, he changed history. And he himself said it was those years of being in solitary confinement which opened the window of freedom. So sometimes we really, in order to really master the issue of freedom, we need to really, really, really enslave ourselves. But there's a freedom in that. There always was a freedom. It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we don't suffer. But then
You're free to be suffer whatever you like, and you're free to come back and grow from this suffer.
yeah, exactly.
Free always there. There's few energy, it's always there. We build with this energy more things of ourselves from inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inside world.
So the best thing we can do for ourselves is to realize that freedom. The freedom to move in and the freedom to move out again. You know, so much of spirituality is based on the one-way street. Liberate yourself from this human suffering life, this awful state that we're in. If it was only half the story of liberation to freedom with no way back, then in a way we would be totally self-annihilating. We'd be working against ourselves from the core. It always has to be free to come into form again. It always has to be both. Life is a celebration. It's not a punishment. The very belief that life is a punishment is programmed.
You create it.
Yes.
You create it. You create whatever you like.
We create it the moment we feel for a second that our freedom is lost. That it's not blissful all the time, that it's painful also.
It's not lost.
Exactly.
You just cover it.
Exactly. But then we perpetuate this belief, and then we have babies. We're still having babies believing that life is some kind of punishment that we have to be liberated from. Come on, baby, start to meditate quick because you're going to suffer here and you have to get off this karmic lifetime wheel as quickly as possible because really life is crap. It's not. It's really, really, really not. There's no reason why it shouldn't be blissful, ecstatic, and full of passion.
But there are type of people that then it's like that.
Yeah.
As a type of people, they born this way.
Yeah.
And always kind of don't see it, even
Yeah.
if you from the outside see that.
Yeah. Because they're doing a particular kind of service of a particular kind of imprisonment. So from that mindset of being completely cut off from your own freedom and your own joy, from that mindset, even from a mindset of depression, you can learn an awful lot about how far it's possible to go, and that at the end it's still okay. There is a liberation there. There will always be a liberation. There'll be a liberation from the chemistry of the mind. There'll be a liberation from the body, even if it's only in the death process.
Yes. For them, yes.
Yeah, sometimes it's a slower rhythm. Sometimes it's only then. But sometimes, and it's really attuned to each individual service, but sometimes it's in the middle, getting a fatal disease, having a real shock of somebody close to them dying, nervous breakdown, or they become so depressed that the depression itself just cracks, like ice just cracks. It's not sustainable anymore.
Yes, but what's the service?
The service is in being there in that pain anyway, because anyway they're making the circulation of pure existential freedom into the depths of form or states of being, and they are bringing light there, even if they look from the outside completely chronically depressed, and moving back again. They make this circulation. You know, we wouldn't know we were happy if they weren't depressed. This is also a service. We wouldn't know we were happy if we didn't know what it's like when we're totally frozen and we're not connected, and we're cut off, and we're not feeling. It's all part of, and also,
yes,
they're not separate from us. They're part of the whole web of interconnectedness, of interbeing. You know, depressed people are not cut off. They believe themselves to be. They're in a prison.
So I realize my freedom partly because people that are next to me feel that life is prison and they don't.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
So that's a service.
That's
a service from them
That's how
to
it
you.
really works. I mean, I wouldn't realize my own freedom and happiness.
How it really works is that we are absolutely interconnected with each other. Yeah. And there's freedom in that. There's incredible freedom in that. At first it's like, oh shit, we have to carry each other. There's this beautiful song, you know, we are one, we get to carry each other. We're one, but we're not the same. We're one, but we're not the same. We get to carry each other. So me and Tony used to sing this. We get to carry each other. Oh shit! Yeah. But if you go all the way with the interdependency, there's an incredible liberation in it as well.
All the way?
All the way, not half the way. Not just your mother and people that you really have an issue with. All the way.
What do you mean all the way?
All the way in releasing the belief that the individual is the last frontier, that you are the last frontier of yourself. That actually you're responding to others anyway, to their joy, to their freedom, to their ingenuity, to their passion, to their freedom, their awesome existential life, that you're part of that. And within that, there are areas of suffering. There's cloud, there's weather, there's pain, there's insanity. But when you go all the way, first of all, your own suffering aspect in it is reduced. There's an incredible suffering in believing yourself to be separate. And it's really an insanity to believe ourselves to be separate in an absolute way. It's insane. You know, in a way, every scientist is a little bit insane. You know, he sits there looking at dark energy at the center of the universe, at the mysteries, the quantum entanglement of the universe, as if he's not part of it, as if he's standing outside, as if it's not affecting even the way he sees. Again, it's programmed. It's programmed to believe that you're isolated. The main cause of suffering, that you're separate. And it's programmed even in the afterlife. When you die, you'll have a separate individual soul, which will, if the Messiah comes, will be risen again, separately. But not if you were a bad girl. It's programmed and it's sanctified, this theology of separation. And separation is a miraculous happening of existence into many different forms, which are never separate. Like the cells in the body are not separate, like particles are not separate. Even when they're distances apart, there is an entanglement between different particles, they're in communication. Meaning even if we choose from our supposed freedom to not connect to a person that we have been entangled with anymore. Anyway, it's happening. Our choice is based on not realizing the freedom which was there within it. Because if we're really free at the same time that we're entangled, we wouldn't mind. We wouldn't need to reject. We wouldn't need to make separations like that. So there's a turnaround where every place we hit a wall like this is an invitation to remember our freedom. Where is it? It's also there. And it's at the heart of existentially being here and now. It's really at the heart of being for real. And being for real is even not believing too much in your own feelings. And their circulation with thoughts. Not really believing in anything too much. It's there, it's happening, that's fine, but it's something which we can be curious about and explore. But it's something, it's a thing, it's a happening. We're not the happening, we're not the thing. We're not the emotion. So that's a little bit about freedom and liberation, which is a whole giant topic.
Yes, but in that case you have to always be aware.
No.
No?
You could also be totally asleep. That's the most free. Your perception is, in a way, it's incredibly beautiful from a human aspect, but it's totally overrated. It's better would be to say we should strive to be natural. We should strive to be for real. We should strive to be for real in the sense that when we meet a fear, for example, of saying what's true to us in the moment, which is only in the moment, it's not an absolute truth, we should say it anyway. We should move through fear. Fear makes us very unreal. Being for real is really screwed over by our fears. And the first fear is the fear of rejection. This fear that it's possible for yourself to be isolated, which is the same thing we cling to for safety. When we're truly for real, awareness by itself expands. Yeah. And if awareness is free, then consciousness is pure. It will follow. Because the mind hasn't got that much to think about. Except for fun. Just what I think about freedom and liberation in this moment. This morning. Ask next week. But it's really interesting because we saw this division again into the trilogy of the 3 layers of I am here. And on the level of consciousness, it's really about liberation and freedom. On the level of the heart, it's more about salvation and dread. So here it's fear and freedom. Here it's dread, which is a bit different from fear. It's like a horror. And salvation, the saving of form, the affirmation of form. And on the level of emptiness, it seems to be about condemnation and passion. It's 3 very, very important layers. But the freedom factor, because it's existential, moves through all 3. You are always redeemed. You are always okay. The condemnation was always an illusion. You are always saved. There's nothing to save. It's already saved. It's a really good Macintosh. You are always free. Form can be liberated, but you are always free. It's interesting because it brings in this whole religious rhetoric. And then you see how religion has kept us confused in a way through its popularization of these ideas. Redemption. So let's try a meditation. So we start with the ID and put a really try and evoke the purest, purest, purest light possible. A light that is so pure that, or intense, that it could even blind the physical eyes, just for a moment. You know, we imagine a certain kind of light, but actually there's an even... We can release our imagination and just for a moment allow the possibility that there's a light even more intense than that, beyond the physical eyes. It's just physical eyes, you know, the light that we see anyway. But to really put that here and release it. To move down to the focus position, which is between the ID and the crown. Let ourselves softly expand, horizontally or infinitely. There's a lot of infinity there. And then to allow this whole layer to move down to the first depression point. The base of the sternum. And then being at the same time totally aware of this ability to visualize or to create, and even stepping back, this is more important even than the visualization, to the space behind that from which we project, from which we can imagine. We visualize or create a skyline of still water and sky. And it can have clouds or not, or mist, but try and allow it to come to a position where the water and the sky is visually practically the same thing. You almost can't see where the water line ends and the sky begins. Yeah. And try and circulate, and of course it's probably some kind of shade of blue or turquoise, but it can be dark or light or whatever comes of itself. And then try to allow the circulation between that which is able to create an experience, to invite an experience, or the experience itself, and where the experience comes from, behind the stage. Try and step back into the one that experiences, the one that sees. There's quite a lot of space there to step back. So whereas normally we're kind of struggling to put the picture, to put the experience, now we're actually really allowing that struggle and allowing ourselves to fall back in that place of no effort. And if there is no experience, that's absolutely fine also. Because the place behind imagination, or behind the invitation to experience, is what we're going for. And that can be a pressure, so it's nice to make the circulation back to the scenic Alaskan portrait and out again to the place from which we visualize. Oh, hello, Alaska. So shall we do it? Half an hour?